Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.
This show is brought to you by PrepareWise. We live in uncertain times. Therefore, you need to be prepared. And the best way to be prepared is having 60 or 90 days of food on hand. The place that I go is preparewise.com. They're not only a sponsor, I buy all of my emergency preparedness food from them. Their service is the best. Their selection, incredible. Go to preparewise.com. Use the code LUTZ for a special offer. You are listening to the FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com. I'm Kerry Lutz on 1590 WPSL. So now the Fed is going to taper, probably much the same way that Governor Chris Christie is going to taper his physique. And I'm looking for the band on the markets, and the greatest band watcher out there is Andy Hoffman of MilesFranklin.com. Hello, Andy.
Hey, actually, I didn't even ask why, but I think Chris Christie just came to Denver with, of all people, Prince Harry, and I'm not even sure why.
I don't know. Prince Harry doesn't need to lose much weight. He doesn't need to taper. And there's no way that the Fed can taper. They can't do the equivalent of bariatric surgery on this deficit, can they?
No. Look, we've been hearing about the end of QE. Actually, if you go back, it's March 2010, if you could believe it. That's the first time that they created the propaganda. And basically, what happened then was the Congress asked Bernanke and kind of put him on put him in front of the fire. And since that time, he's been scared off by the whole concept of having to talk about it. So he's used all kinds of different mouthpieces in the mainstream media, one of them being this idiot John Hilsenrath at Wall Street Journal, who, by the way, for all the people who believe that every time he says something he's right, he has a horrific track record of things that he's predicted about what the Fed's going to do. But anyway, he just put out another article Friday. The Fed's considering tapering, and if you read it, it's nothing more than platitudes, which is no different than anything that the Fed ever says. They just keep printing money, and who cares if they stop printing $85 billion a month and only printed $80 billion or $60 billion or $40 billion? It's like saying someone who's smoking 4 packs a day cuts down to 3 packs a day. How is that going to help anybody?
Yeah, well, the only one that hurts there is the cigarette companies because they're losing sales. And in this place, look, what's going to happen the second they really cut off. That's why they never will.
They cannot. People don't realize that the deficit right now is about $1 trillion a year. It's actually a lot more, but as you know, there's so much, quote, off-balance sheet spending and debt that's not included in all those official figures. But right now it's roughly, let's say, $1 trillion a year. And by the way, the sequester is not going to change any of that. And each 1% increase in interest rates will raise the deficit by $170 billion. And that's simply based on the $17 trillion of public disclosed national debt. That's almost a 20% increase just for 1% increase in interest rates. And given that the Fed has been not just the buyer, the biggest buyer, they've been almost the only buyer of Treasury bonds. If they stopped even in the slightest bit, let's say the 10-year, which is now around 2%, goes up to 5%. That would add $600 billion to the deficit just for this year alone.
Yeah, and that's off into the indefinite future. And then the fact that the deficit's going up anyway, therefore the interest expense on it has to be going up as well. And there is no way out of this thing. And what would happen if they admitted that they were never going to stop, Andy?
Well, of course, they don't admit anything. As we were just talking about, the worse things get, the more bullish the propaganda and the more blatant the attacks on, for instance, gold. But if you just look at a chart of the 10-year Treasury yield, I'm looking at it right now, I have been so vocal about it in my writings of any time it gets up to 2%, the Fed, the Treasury, the powers that be will create some kind of, quote, market event that makes the rates plunge back down. And I'm looking at over the past 10 years, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I can't even count them. It's about 25 different instances. And in fact, the only time that it ever got measurably above 2%, when it got to a whopping 2.4% in March of 2012, you know what happened then? That that's when the Fed's whale trade collapsed because of derivatives based on interest rates. And they, frankly, if it kept up going up anymore, J.P. Morgan could have been taken under. So that you have not only the fact that the entire economy and the finances of the government are dependent on sub 2%, 10-year rates, but then you have all the investment banks that have their derivatives, their credit swaps that are holding interest rates down at risk.
Yeah, I mean, to go and save anything in fiat currencies looks to me to be a suicidal move. Yes, it is, and it's been for the longest time, and that's why it's so comical that I still am blown away by the fact that Bernanke, and he doesn't say anything, he only speaks in platitudes, but about 2 or 3 months ago, he came out and said, I have the best inflation record of any post-war Fed chairman, and I just can't imagine what drug he was on. If that's the one thing that he's going to say strongly, that would be it. Because I wrote a piece called Delusions of a Fed Chairman. There's plenty of stuff out there showing he literally has the worst. There is no one who has a worse record. I mean, sure, you could say Paul Volcker because he was around in the late 70s, or conversely, he was there in the early 80s. But the fact is, by far, no one has inflated the money supply like Ben Bernanke. Only Greenspan is even close. And by far, we've had more real inflation, according to Shadow Stats, for instance, in the 7 or 8 years that he has been the Fed chairman. Hey, and what about the unemployment picture? Has anybody's ever been worse than Bernanke? Yeah, and the scary thing is that the Fed, to this point, I don't even know what the Fed's actual mandate is. I believe it was initially just to control inflation. Then they created this dual mandate of maximum employment and low inflation. I don't know how you could do both those things at once, but they failed miserably in both cases. Right now we have the lowest labor participation rate in, I think it's 40 years. We have the lowest real unemployment since the Depression. And of course, we're paying more for the things that we want, the things that we need in life, like food and energy and healthcare and education, than we've ever paid. You live in Florida just like me, and you know all about floods, tropical storms, and hurricanes. And you know that the key to surviving is preparation, which is why you should go right now to www.preparewise.com and order some emergency preparedness food now. I did, and I feel better knowing I have it. It's extremely inexpensive and makes so much sense. Did you see those people in New York, regular folks like you and I, dumpster diving? It just makes so much sense to be prepared, and the food tastes quite delicious. There's no chemicals, it's certified GMO-free, so there's no reason not to order. Go to the site now, preparewise.com. Make sure you use the code LUTZ, L-U-T-Z, and you'll get free shipping, and depending upon your order, a whole lot more. That's preparewise.com. Preparewise.com, it always pays to be prepared. Yeah, I just found something on, of all places, Facebook, and I want to share this with you because it's so powerful, and it illustrates the lie of all the government statistics. Give me 2 seconds just to find it here, because it's so unbelievable that, not much surprises me anymore. Nothing surprises you, I know. But no, not after 11 years. But this one was spectacular, if I have to say so myself. Gallon of milk, price of a gallon of milk, 2008, $2.16. What do you think it is today? Well, I live in Denver, so it's a little different than New York, but I'm guessing that it's $3.50. $4.59. All right, I won't go down the whole list. There's 10 things. But you like a burger just like me, don't you? Right? Well, are you looking at the Big Mac Index now? No, I'm looking just a pound of beef. $2.08, $3. Beef just hit all-time highs. Yeah, well, I don't know. This is just 2012. We're not even in 13. $3.68 in 08 and $7.98 in 012. That's a 117% increase. The worst thing, though, thing that went up is potatoes. A pound of potatoes in 08 was 32 cents. Now $1.30. All right, and then a pound of butter, $1.95 in 08, $5.19 in 2012. and you wonder why your standard of living is going down.
Well, that's right. Now the BLS or whatever, whoever makes the CPI is going to say that people will start eating bologna instead of beef. I mean, beef hit an all-time high price last week. I read that McDonald's is taking Angus burgers off the menu because of the beef prices. And again, I was mentioning the Big Mac Index, which talks about how much it costs and how much it has cost to purchase a Big Mac in various countries around the world. And, right now I'm looking at the top 5 countries for how much a Big Mac is: Switzerland, Norway, Sweden, Brazil, Denmark. $6.80, $6.70, $5.90. Actually, I'd have to go down to find where New York is because I don't have everything. But the fact is, if you look at real inflation, not what they tell you in the media and from Washington, it's real. And of course, people don't include so many things in inflation. For instance, when you have your taxes increase, that's inflation. We just had an across-the-board payroll tax increase of 2%. If you're making more than $450,000, they added another 5%. Then you have your property taxes, and you have your sales taxes. How about this internet tax? I just read a piece that I can't remember if it came out yet called Killer Tax. If they actually tax everything that's online, and from the way I read it, it's not just anything online, it's anything that's exempt from tax. That's like a massive, massive income, or whatever you want to call it, tax across the board for every American.
Yeah, and that's a regressive tax too, as they call it, because it hits everybody who's buying. All consumption taxes are regressive, and somehow that's wrong. You should only be doing progressive taxes because that only affects people earning more. It affects them more than people earning less. But that's the whole fallacy of this nonsense. But point is that I'm sure they've used hedonics and whatever else to hide these price increases. They only went up this much in 4 years, and in addition, the stuff, the wants, the things that you want as well, cars have also gone up similarly, but they've managed to hide it all because that's their job.
Right, and those hedonics, of course, hurt so many people because, that's what they adjust the cost of living adjustments for all these entitlements to. And of course, it keeps in interest rates down, which means savers get hurt. Everyone gets hurt by these things. But, just to focus on this internet tax again, it truly is a killer tax of epic proportion. I think I'm a pretty representative person of society as far as my shopping habits. I would say that I do 85 to 90% of all my shopping online. And I'll tell you, if you add 8 or 10% to the cost of everything that I possibly want to buy, I'm going to be making a lot less purchases. And I would say that I'm one of the lucky ones who actually has a few bucks, not that many, but enough that I can buy stuff. Anyone who's marginal about being able to buy anything is going to stop cold. And you know where all that money is going to go from that tax? Right into the government. I'm reading today that it looks like Obama and David Cameron are meeting to talk about the chemical weapons they believe Syria is using against their people, against who knows who else. So that's where your internet sales tax dollars are going to go, to bombing Syria.
Yeah, what a good use of it. Well, hey, better than hiring more IRS agents, right?
Right. We won't even go into that one. Hey, but, who benefits from going into Syria? Banks, Halliburton, and, of course, defense contractors.
You got it. And that's what it's all about. By the way, did you catch the thing that they're using the IRS as a political tool against certain out-of-favor groups like the Tea Party?
Yeah.
And, I'm shocked.
Yeah, it's a good thing that I'm not registered as a Republican. I'm registered as an independent because I was wondering why they're not coming after me.
Yeah, I'm registered as an independent, too. I actually had a party allegiance for a while. Then I said, no, I hate them both. They're both tools of the kleptocrats, and who needs them?
In fact, based on our experience, and I wrote a whole piece, I think I called it Political Harassment, about what my wife and I went through last fall with all the political phone calls. Now, I live in Colorado, which is a major swing state. One year it'll go for blue, 1 year it'll go for red, and I'm a registered independent. I've never in my life, I believe, been registered as a single party. But I would say that 90% of the phone calls that we got were from Republicans trying to make us vote. So for some reason, maybe it's because we're from New York originally, they believed, these people, that we were Democrats. And it just, I guess the IRS believes so as well. Yeah. And I hate them both.
Yeah, well, what's the like?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a tool of the government making you into a tax and debt serf, a milk cow, as our friend Doug Casey calls it. And at some point, I was talking to a guy by the name of Wayne Root. I think you met him last year at Freedom Fest. He's a big libertarian guy. He was a libertarian vice presidential candidate. He wrote a book, How to Survive, basically Obama's reelection. And one of them was to move to a low-tax state. But he says that the wealthy, those 8-digit net worth people and up, are going to move out of the country. And it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, David Schechtman talks about it all the time. The president, or I should say the founder of Miles Franklin, he's from Minnesota, and he just moved, for more than half the year to Florida for that very reason. In fact, they're raising the income tax in Minnesota as well. So people are fleeing to these low tax states, and I guess Texas is one of them. Arizona, I believe, is another one. But the fact is, these states are all in dire financial straits, and having a whole bunch of people not paying taxes is only going to make things worse.
And let me tell you something. There is a flood of people moving from the overtaxed Northeast down here to Florida. We've got like a little mini building boom going on. Obviously, the rates play a lot of have a lot of to do with that. But the point is that a hedge fund guy won't say, oh, I'm moving the XYZ fund out of New York. Screw New York. We're not going to pay New York taxes anymore. Instead, they're saying, well, we're building a branch office down here where I'm going to spend part of the time 186 days a year, so I will no longer be a tax slave of New York. But you could just feel the sucking sound. You can hear it, and they're running for the exits. And these states are going to go bankrupt. There's no question about it.
And it's been going on for years. I mean, we moved out to Colorado from New York, actually 6 years ago to the day was our closing, for that very reason, not necessarily for taxes, but the cost of living is much lowered here. And if you look around, what we see in this neighborhood, in this county, in the state, it's people moving from high-cost states. A ton of people from New York, from California, New Jersey, Connecticut, you name it. And it's for some reasons it's income tax, and for some reason it's housing costs, and some reason it's education costs. But the fact is, it turns out that the states that have the highest taxes are the ones in the worst shape, and they're losing their tax bases quickly.
Yeah, it's not a coincidence. And also, generally, I would venture to say, Andy, it's a better quality of life in those low tax states as well. Florida's government's definitely bloated. We've talked about the state debt clock, all that good stuff. But the fact of the matter is, after living in New York, in the Northeast, my whole life, moving down here, I felt like somebody had opened up a jail cell. I felt like, even though, relatively speaking, Florida is not the freest place in the country, nonetheless, it still was, I felt like I'd been let out of jail.
As I speak to you from my home office, looking across at my wife in the kitchen, when I lived in New York, up until 2007, I commuted to Manhattan. Actually, I was in Long Island for a while, but then I moved to Brooklyn and Hoboken just to shorten those commutes, which were still long. And I had a very stressful life. Since I moved out here, every job I've had, I've worked from home. I would say that probably 75% of the people in my neighborhood work from home or work in some kind of consulting or part-time situation at home. And people are very happy. So you put together the lower cost and the better lifestyle. And why wouldn't anyone do it? Of course, you have to have a skill set that someone needs. And, there's a lot of sales jobs out here, but there aren't a lot of corporations. And, you need to find someone that'll give you that mobility. So I urge everyone possible to adapt their skill sets to be able to work from home or part-time with an office, because it's the change in your lifestyle is immeasurable.
Yeah, that's why I like talking to you, Andy, because you get all this stuff, and you've adapted your life to make yourself happier. And there was no pleasure taking that Metro North train into Manhattan every day, which I did for years. And, I'd get up. I wouldn't get up real early because I'm not a morning person. I mean, I just have cobwebs, and I don't start really thinking until about 11:30 in the morning. And I know that's a flaw in myself. I admit it. But the idea of I'd leave my office at 7:30, 7:15 in the evening. I'd get home at around 8:30, see my kids for 15 minutes before they'd go to sleep, take their baths, whatever. And the idea of not doing that commute and having nothing to do with the Northeast, severing my connections, was really one of the most liberating things. And whether you're in California, wherever you are, if you're doing a commute, you're wasting your life away. You're really wasting your life. Hey,
I wake up at between 4 and 4:30 a.m. every morning now. When I was commuting to Manhattan, I'd wake up at 6. If that tells you how happy I am. I look forward to waking up. So, yeah. I mean, look, we're talking on it. We're going a bit off topic here, but the fact is, people need to think long and hard about their lives. It's not just about money. And if you can do things to get out of the mainstream world and live your own life while you can, I tell you as strongly as I can to try.
Yeah, it's so worth it, and you can do it. You definitely can, and it's not a question of how much money you have. It's really a question of your skill set and your desire to get out of the status quo and do something that you love to do something that you want to do, not do something that you have to do, because that is the surest way to an unhappy and unfulfilling life. And not to get too philosophical, but, Andy, it's all tied in to the issues that you and I talk about every week, in that, if you're not aware of what's going on here and you think everything is fine, then you really do need a wake-up call.
Yeah, the goal is to liberate yourself in every way possible, because, again, we only do live once. And, we could fight I could spend my whole time ranting and raving, but the fact is I'm just trying to live my life like anyone else. And every day I wake up and think about what can I do to make it easier.
Yeah, and that's how this country was founded, the pursuit of happiness, that whole cliche. That never existed. That was never part of any other country's ethic, to make your life better, to make you happier, and to live the life that you want to live. And it's all tied into this, because when you're a debt serf, when you're a wage slave, you're not really living your life in the pursuit of happiness.
Correct.
So on that note, I'm going to go pursue some more happiness. It's nice and sunny out here. I'm going to cook myself some lunch and think about important things like, how Ben Bernanke trimmed his beard for the last public meeting.
Yep, and there's always another one coming.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the case, until one day there won't be another one coming.
It'll be Janet Yellen.
Yeah, that's why you need to be buying gold and silver, so when the last Fed meeting happens, you'll be ready. MilesFranklin.com, FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com. Don't forget, go to FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com, sign up for the newsletter, and sign up for the Liberty Mastermind Symposium taking place in Dallas, Texas, June 28th, 29th. Andy will be there, and so many others. And on that note, Andy, we'll talk to you next week.
Great. Thanks a lot, Kerry.
This show is brought to you by PrepareWise, the leader in emergency preparedness food. It's the only place I go to. Go to preparewise.com. Use the code LUTZ. If you want, call them on the phone. Talk to my friend Amy. She is amazing. She will get you exactly what you need. You can't beat the prices. You can't beat the quality. Preparewise.com.